All right, thank you very much. And here comes the keyboard. Alrighty. So let's get started. So quickly, I'll be going over membership, finances, working groups, and then talk a little bit about the conference that we just had last week and what we've got coming up. So membership. So we're actually, members continue to grow quite quickly. We're up to 213 members, and actually I know that a couple more have come in since we did this report. And so we're also well over 1,000 committers. So things are going well on the membership front. You can see the breakdown by membership classification here, and definitely one of the things that we're very happy with is that we seem to have, it took us a while to break through that 200 member barrier, but we've now at all-time high for membership, and expect that to keep going. So a couple of new members since March when we spoke last. Just a few that I think are worthy of calling out. Obviously, you see Kichwa Coders is about to give us a talk and an update on what they're doing. A number of those, like the Industrial Internet Consortium and others are related. OpenHab are related to our IoT work that's going on. Diamond Light Source is an example of one of the companies that's joined in as a result of the announced this morning science working group. So we're seeing steady influx of members driven by the various working groups that we have undergoing, as well as the membership in Eclipse for all of the good traditional reasons. A couple of non-renewals that have dropped off. Sorry to see them go, but these things happen. Another membership change is Bradex changed their level from support from strategic to solution member. And then moving along to finances. So fundamentally, things haven't really changed much since we spoke last. We're still expecting this year to come in at $4.3 million in total revenue, and that does include on the top line the revenue from our conferences. On the expense side, we're expecting $4.9 million for a shortfall of $600,000. We often, at this time of the year, are predicting a shortfall that come in significantly closer to zero. As you can see from the last 3 years, we've been 0.1 plus or minus on the financial results in terms of profitability. We're hopeful that by the end of the year we'll be much closer to zero than the expected 600,000 shortfall. Okay, some working group updates. Let's start with the Internet of Things. So new members, DC Square, Cisco has been an existing Eclipse member for many years, but which has specifically stepped up to join this working group. OpenHab and the Industrial Internet Consortium. We had one new project proposal in the last couple of months, joining the other 14 or 15 that are already that were already part of the IoT community, and that's Moquette, which is an MQTT broker implemented in Java. So we're very excited and happy to have Moquette join the family of projects that are supporting MQTT at Eclipse. One of the activities that's going on that's we're pretty pleased with is a project to host the development of our IoT-related projects. And Jens Ryman from IBH Systems and Kai Kreuzer from the Smart Home Project have stepped forward and said that they're willing to be our PMC leaders. Of course, all of this has to be approved by the board at some point, and hopefully we'll get that done reasonably soon. In terms of outreach, we've been very active. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but suffice it to say that between Benjamin Cabet, Ian Skerret, and myself, we've managed to cover quite a few projects around the world over the last couple of months, and it seems like literally there's an IoT conference every week we could go to, so we obviously can't do everything, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of getting the word out that Eclipse is a cool place to work on the Internet of Things. So coming up in the next quarter, we're going to be doing a lot around promoting all of our Java-based projects for IoT at the Java 1 conference in early October. We're going to be organizing some hack days, obviously finalize the creation of the top-level project, and we are fully intending to keep very busy on outreach and evangelism for our IoT work. Okay, moving on to location tech. So in the last couple of months, we've attended 9 live events, done 3 webinars. We have 23 Open Academy interns supporting location tech projects and working on those projects. So we're great to it's great to see them jumping in and supporting those projects and getting some interesting new work done. Had 2 new project proposals come in, and ran our first ever Location Tech Summit in Washington, D.C., co-located with an event being held by Directions Magazine. So it was, I think that was a big success. So Location Tech continues its momentum. So 9 live events. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we've been in Toulouse and Washington and a number of other places over the last couple of months. And there's just the map of the upcoming Location Tech Tour 2014. So if you're interested in joining any of these Location Tech events coming up in the fall of this year, please contact info@locationtech.org. So there's lots of interesting opportunities to speak on the topic of geospatial technologies. The Science Working Group, which has an amazing logo, love that logo, and the press release announcing the creation of the Science Working Group just went out this morning. Some activities, so group created in earlier this month. The press release went out today. We've got the website up. We've got 10 members, 3 of which are on the steering committee. We've got a couple of great project proposals from Diamond Light Source and also Oak Ridge National Lab, and those being ICE and Donsai. And so we're very excited to have those new projects. I highly encourage folks to read the proposals and see what we've got coming. Had a successful Eclipse Science Day and also in the UK, and had a fun meeting with the unconference at Eclipse Conference. So 4 live events this quarter. So you can see some pictures there of people learning all about the new Science Working Group activities. And moving on, so next topic is welcoming the Open M2M Working Group. This will have an official launch event in 2 weeks' time in Germany. But just to give you a little background on this new working group. What they're focusing on is support for the automotive development process, which consists of simulating, hardware-in-the-loop testing, field tests, lifecycle improvement, and a lot of this process is data-driven. And so a typical automotive lifecycle will generate terabytes of data per car, per model. Just an example, Audi runs 11 different productive measuring data systems, and all of these are based on the current version of OpenMDM. And the intent is to bring this technology to the Eclipse community. It will be licensed under the EPL and create a working group in support of it. And this is really a classic sort of Eclipse community behavior, where the goal is to create a standard implementation for all of the industry to use. And all of this technology is based on a standard that comes from an organization called ASAM, so ODS-based systems. And so this is going to be announced, as I mentioned, in just a couple of weeks. Actually, I've got it on my to-do list to get the email out to the membership to review the charter. I've got that in my outbox, and bring the project and this community over to Eclipse. So the companies that are involved are Audi, BMW, and Daimler. Obviously, some pretty big names in the automotive industry. Then on the participating side, we've got Gigatronic, Canoe, Peak Solution, and Science and Computing. So all these companies have now recently become members of the Eclipse Foundation, or will be very soon. And so welcome one and all to the Eclipse community. The Automotive Working Group has been around for a number of years. Very similar membership list to the Open MDM group. The big activity recently was to get the EA Top project going at Eclipse and working towards building a common build framework for electrical engineering that is going to be contributed by Bosch. There's still some discussions going on there, and there's planning to have a number of EclipseCon Europe workshops for the Automotive Work Group. Long-term support, number of new members. Welcome Zorad and Ed Merckx. We've very active in terms of new listings on the LTS marketplace. A new version of the charter was published. Hopefully we're going to get Bosch signed up as a full member of the steering committee, the working group soon. And a number of upcoming activities related to getting more support activities around RCP and explore needs in other domains like rail, energy, OpenMDM, and do some more work on the LTS infrastructure, especially around signing of builds. Next up is PolarSys. So PolarSys is a group that's working on doing modeling tools primarily for large systems engineering programs. The upcoming Luna release is an important milestone because two very important projects, Papyrus and Sirius, will both be shipping their 1.0 release. They're starting to redefine their packages, and so they can start shipping those. A number of new members have joined, Zelixsoft and ESI Group, and there was a pretty active participation at EclipseCon France from the PolarSys community, and very active at both the conference itself and at the unconference that preceded EclipseCon France. One of the big work items for this year for PolarSys is to do a formal maturity assessment of the assets within the PolarSys community. And so this is going to be an ongoing piece of work. They will be integrating a number of standard Forge metrics for seeing activity and maturity of projects, also working in the content from our new dashboard, and trying to work towards being able to do evaluations of code quality, community vitality, and other metrics in assessing the maturity of each of the projects within PolarSys. So moving on for EclipseCon. So we had 265 registrations for the conference, which was quite substantially, I think on the order of 40 more over last year. The unconference the day before the conference was a big success. We had over 100 attendees there, so we're obviously very pleased with that. We had a lot of really great feedback from the participants of the unconference, so it's definitely something that we'll look forward to running again, both in France and perhaps other venues as well. Coming up, we have EclipseCon Europe in late October, so please reserve those dates, 28th to the 30th of October. Back once again in beautiful downtown Ludwigsburg, just outside of Stuttgart in Germany. And looking forward to that, and co-hosting once again with the OSGI Alliance, the OSGI community event for 2014. So looking forward to seeing everybody there. All right, so Andrew, I'll hand it back over to you, and you can introduce your other speakers.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. So our next speaker is going to be Tracy Miranda from Kichwa Coders. I'm just going to help get Tracy set up here, so bear with us. Okay. Okay, Tracy, the floor is yours. At the moment, I'm seeing your smiling face. So if you do screen share, you'll be able to share any slides or whatever you need to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everybody. Hi, yeah, I'm Tracy Miranda from Kichwa Coders, and Jonah Graham, who's my partner, but both in business and life. He's not actually joining us, but I'm sure he's happy with everything I say. But yeah, we've actually been working with Eclipse since 2001. So back in the days, I used to work for Altera doing FPGA development and started off doing Eclipse. And I had the distinction at the time, I think Doug Schaefer said I was the first person not in North America to be using CDT. So yeah, it's been great working with Eclipse. I'm just going to share a few slides and see if that works. One second. Can you see any slides?
Still see your actually we see your desktop at the moment. So I think if you switch to your presentation now, I think that's what we'll see. Yep, looking good.
Okay, great. Okay, so a bit of background. We do software tools mostly for the semiconductor and the scientific industries. So we've always focused on that embedded side. That's been the core we started off with and keep going through to today. So lots of work on CDT and debug framework, DSF, and multi-core, and that combined with system on chip, which usually involves integration. And Eclipse has just been always a great platform for integrating various tools in the embedded world. And more recently, probably since I'd say 2008, we've started to see more science, and that's been really interesting. So doing a lot more on the science side, and that's primarily things like Python and Java integration, as well as, again, a lot of science tends to be just taking tools that have existed for ages but aren't really maintained anymore and saying, well, can we put those into Eclipse and can we integrate them and have a big cohesive flow for whatever specific science application there is. But I'd probably describe, that what we do is fundamentally help companies to make the most out of open source software when their business isn't really software. So typically with embedded companies, they're selling chips, and science companies are focused on the research. So we help sort of bridge that gap between open source and help them use the software in that way. And I'll just go very quickly through a couple of maybe client stories. So first, on the embedded world, there's a company called Cyan, which is based in Cambridge in the UK. And they're a fabulous semiconductor company. They had some chips, but they needed a world-class IDE in a short space of time. So we worked with them a few years back to migrate their tool configured to the Eclipse platform, and it was really sort of the only way that they could have without needing their own in-house software to have a polished IDE which had tight integration with the hardware and have the debug system, debug capabilities, and a build system as well. And so Cyan were able to just improve on their tools and focus on their sort of value add, which is memory management and solutions for RF and USB. So yeah, that's a quick screenshot, and the Eclipse people will recognize if they GEF underlying the tools, the chip design. Then on the science side, this really exciting work where we've been working with the National Synchrotron based here in the UK. And back in 2008, started working with Diamond, and they have all these different experiment hutches running different types of software, nothing integrated, some with scripts, some with IDE. They had a Swing Java IDE, but they really wanted to move on to Eclipse, but were a bit afraid of the risks involved. So what started off as just a 1-month project developing an Eclipse prototype has turned into a long-standing relationship where we've help them develop their system architecture and integrate various tools. And the big thing we're really pushing forward at the moment is the integration with PyDev and a Java to Python layer. And that sort of ties in with the science working group, and Diamond Light Source have been one of the main companies behind the science working group, and we've been pretty excited to join as well on the back of the group starting. And yeah, just from all the initial stuff that's happening, we're really excited about the direction it's going in and all the things we can do to combine Eclipse and science. And this is a little screenshot of Dawn, which is now becoming an Eclipse project. So yeah, I think if I just... Are we back on me?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, Tracy. I guess that's it, eh?
Yeah, that's all of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you speaking. Our next speaker is going to be Steve Gifford from Mousebird Consulting. So, Steve, I'll give you a second there to set up your slides and get ready to talk.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. All
Great.
yours.
Okay. Let's give it a go. All right. Just to make this more complicated, I'm running off of an iPad, which I'm mirroring through Google Hangouts. So we'll see how that works out. So, excuse me. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is open source geospatial and map display on mobile devices, which is what I do. So I'll just dive right in. So I'll just talk briefly about some of the different apps that use geospatial data display, weather apps, maps apps, and also the kind of the catch-all term of data visualization, which is kind of one of my favorites because it's definitely more open-ended. And let's get started. So what I do is I'm a software engineer and a consultant. I primarily work on mobile devices, pretty much exclusively anymore. iOS, that is iPhone, iPad, and Android devices as well. And I specialize in 3D and OpenGL ES-based rendering. Basically real-time stuff, often 3 dimensions, sometimes not, that sort of thing. And I also specialize in open source. So I use a lot of open source, and I contribute back a toolkit called Whirliglobe Maply. And that's the toolkit that I'm going to be showing you here. So that toolkit, Whirliglobe Maply, it's made of 2 parts. The Whirliglobe part is a 3D interactive globe, and the Maply part is a 2-dimensional map, what you might call a flat map. It's licensed under the Apache 2.0 license. It uses OpenGL ES, which is the embedded systems version of OpenGL. It's very fast, and it can often do 60 frames a second on mobile devices. And it does a variety of different things: vectors, Bapes maps, labels, shapes, things like that. There'll be demos here shortly, so that'll make more sense. And it's for iPad and iPhone and Android. And again, it's completely open source. So it's used by a different collection of people all over the place. Civil aviation users are big. These are people who are making apps for private pilots. Map apps, of course, those are 2D display maps, sort of like Google Maps or Apple Maps, but usually with custom data for different purposes. Geography apps are also kind of one of my favorite areas. And data visualization is just sort of a catch-all, somebody who wants to look at their data on a globe or a 3D map or what have you. So let's take a look at a weather app. Now this is a fairly popular app in the US, and it covers the US and the UK. It's a weather display app. So with it you can see basically if it's going to rain on your head at any time. Now of course we're mirroring this through all sorts of connections here, so it's going to be a little slower in the display than it is in real life. But what it's for is essentially seeing what the weather is at a given location. And the guys who do this, Forecast.io, process the data to get it fairly high resolution in some areas from a variety of data sources. And then my contribution is my toolkit is used to display the results on, and in this case, an iPad, but is more commonly used on an iPhone. So this presents a lot of interesting challenges. Obviously, weather data, particularly animated weather data, entails a lot of data transfer between servers and the device. And you've got animation to deal with, so that kind of multiplies things by 8. There's the whole world to worry about. As the user moves around, they're expecting kind of interactive speeds. And people on mobile devices are not very patient. It either does something immediately or they kill it and go do something else. So it's a really interesting collection of problems. So in addition to showing weather, they can also show global temperature data, and that'll take a second to load in. And I'm not sure how useful this is, but I think it's definitely one of the prettiest features. So you can kind of see how the temperature changes over the last few days. And again, it's running at 60 frames a second here, and a little slower in the Google Hangout, so it might be hard to get a sense. But that's the basic idea. So, as I mentioned before, weather apps are tricky just because of the sheer amount of data involved and the lack of patience on the user side. Um, there are other, so you have to deal with animation, lots of memory use, regular updates. You can't just cache everything. You kind of have to get new data at regular intervals. And the rendering is complex as well. We were using what are called OpenGL ES shaders there to do the rendering of the false color. So another category of app that uses this sort of technology is map display apps, and these are pretty straightforward. People have been using these for a while. These are your Google Maps or your Apple Maps or 1,000 different variants that use other sources of data. And there are lots of different variants here: offline versus online, image maps versus vector. I tend to specialize these days in vector maps, and what that means is that the data is a lot more flexible, if you will. It comes from the server in a more flexible form. So let's take a look at OpenStreetMap data. And I don't really have time to get into what OpenStreetMap is, but it's a great free source of map data. This is OpenStreetMap data for Brazil, and this is the area around Sao Paulo. And this is a vector map, so what that means, again, is that we can kind of zoom around and pan without having to fetch new tiles as often, and it just tends to look a little better. The labels all stay the same size. Sort of a difference in technology there. And again, this is all based on the open source toolkit. One of my favorite areas of Brazil, just kind of as a contrast, if I can find it here, is the capital. Actually, I'm running a little bit low on time. But basically, where Sao Paulo is organic, the capital is very regimented and laid out on a plan, and you can really see it in the map. But let's switch back to the slides here. All right, I was talking a little bit about OpenStreetMap. That always deserves a mention. So OpenStreetMap is a free map. You can just go to openstreetmap.org and look at the map. It's also free data, which is far more interesting to my users. So you can, with some very easy license restrictions, you can grab it and do some neat stuff. It's volunteer run. I was just at an OpenStreetMap conference in Germany, and there are people who sit around just tracing roads off of images, or even go out with their GPS and take tracks and contribute those. It's very open and democratic, and it's very good in a lot of areas, and it's not too bad in the rest. And for a lot of purposes, that's good enough. All right, the last thing I'm going to talk about is kind of the catch-all term of data visualization. And this is one of my favorite areas. I mean, my aviation users, my map users, and my geography app users are kind of my bread and butter. They're people who use the toolkit and then pay me to integrate it or add features. But data visualization is what I really enjoy. And this is sort of a catch-all term for just looking at a bunch of data in 3D or 2D and interacting with it. And the reason I like using these devices for that is that tablets particularly are very friendly, like an iPad or an Android tablet. Users can interact directly with the data. They can actually tap on things, and it really makes them feel like they're kind of down in the data doing something with it. And you can hand a decision maker a tablet. You can just set up a little demo for them and then say, well, here, take a look at it yourself. And these devices are surprisingly capable if you know how to use them. There's obviously a lot of work into figuring out how to do that, but once you've done it, they're quite good. So I'm going to show you a demo here of a visualization that I did a few weeks ago for the San Francisco Bay Area bike share system. Now, we have a bike share system in San Francisco that's fairly new. San Francisco gets a lot of credit for being very progressive in transportation, but we're actually kind of slow on these things. So the Chicago and New York, for example, have really, really impressive bike share systems. Ours is still new, but here's San Francisco right there, and here are the bike share stations in their current status. So if I tap on one of them, I can see that, oh, they're out of bikes at Caltrain, and Caltrain is our commuter rail system. They're always out of bikes at Caltrain. That's kind of where they run out of bikes first. So you can poke around and see what's going on currently, but you can also delve into historical data. So let's look at the most popular trips in the Bay Area on the bike share system. And that's kind of a good map of where people go in downtown and south of Market and such. But we can break it down further. Let's break it down by subscribers who are regular users who pay a yearly fee. And you might have to know a little bit about San Francisco, but I can kind of tell you that's the commuter rail system, and this is a big area here with a lot of a lot of .coms and tech companies and things like that. So people are moving from the rail system to their offices, basically. And let's look at the other type of subscriber. I should say that these are the daily customers who just walk up, pay a fee, and use a bike. And they're tourists. Basically, this is the ferry. This is the Fisherman's Wharf, and then this other one is the ferry building, and those are very big tourist spots. So people are using it to run between the tourist spots in San Francisco primarily. And there's also other information here. You can also see, for example, what where they're most likely to run out of bikes. And again, it's kind of those same spots we looked at, which is not too surprising. So that was data visualization, and that's an app that's called WhirlyViz, and it's basically for general purpose data visualization in 3D or 2D on iOS. So it's run with a JavaScript based scripting language, and you can kind of build up your own visualization where the native code handles the rendering and such, so it's not slow. So it works with network databases. It can do a globe or flat map, and it sort of talks to things like CartoDB or other things like that. Sorry about that. Okay, so last slide here. This is actually the last slide from a different talk, but it's got all the same slides and all the same contact info, of course. If you have any questions about how the toolkit works, or if you have a project that you could think might use it, of course it's open source, so you're free to dive in. And there are some interesting apps which use it as well. And that's basically it for me.
Great, thanks so much, Steve. Our next speaker is my colleague Wayne Beaton. So pardon me as I switch to our slides here. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I'm in the right spot here. 1 second. Okay, take it away, Wayne.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon. I guess before I get into too far into it, I'd like to introduce Richard Bircher. Richard has joined us as a community manager. He's going to be helping with project management stuff. Big part of what he's going to do will be helping us onboard new projects, make it a little easier for new projects to find their way within Eclipse. And just sort of generally help projects get things done, make sure that releases are happening and projects are operating according to the open source rules of engagement. The simultaneous release is coming up very soon. This week. We successfully completed the required release reviews for the projects that required them. I guess we did on June 11th and June 18th. We have a total of 76 projects participating in the simultaneous release this time around, a total of 61 million lines of code. The full list of projects that are participating, the URL is listed on this page if you're curious. You can actually navigate to previous year's releases as well from there if you're just curious to make comparisons. We have a handful of proposals that we received in second quarter. Mike's actually already talked about most of these. I'll highlight the Lua Development Tools project, which was created out of Konecki. Just a piece of Konecki was spun off. It's tools for the Lua, for developing Lua applications, editors, debuggers, that sort of thing. Mike, I think, already talked about Moquette, I think how you're pronouncing it. I thought it was Moquette, but whatever. Tomato. Donsai was already mentioned. Ease, I think, was mentioned. It's a scripting project. It's coming out of the E4 incubator. This is something that's been under development for a little while. It's a resurrection of some scripting stuff that was started years and years ago with a lot of enhancements. Some neat stuff going on in there. That project is just in the process of being provisioned now, so hopefully its code and everything should be available shortly. Since that's an existing code base, that should spin up fairly quickly. One of the things that we've been pushing out this quarter is the new project metrics dashboard. It's based on Metrics Grimoire, an open source project which you can find on GitHub. We have 3 dashboards currently. I've listed the URLs for all of them. I'll mention specifically dashboard.eclipse.org. That's the main dashboard for Eclipse projects. There you will find information about project source code repositories, mailing lists, Bugzilla usage, Skerret usage. There's some work going on now to include support for forums. The data does I think, a fantastic job of showing trends in projects, general activity of projects. If you're curious about, I guess, the activity status of active status of a project, this is a good place to go. Certainly curious about feedback. We have some bugs open in Eclipse as a place to show where the ongoing work is, and of course, if there's problems that you detect or anything, opening up new bugs would always be appreciated. Got a couple. I'll just wrap up my section here with a couple of screenshots from the metrics dashboard. Here I'm just showing the summary, which this is showing code tickets, tickets being Bugzilla participation, and discussion being a mailing list. This be main project dev list, mailing list discussion participation. You can drill down into each of these. There's different views. This is showing along the top different ways to navigate into the data. Again, this summary, the page is a little bit longer. I just showed a snapshot of what was at the top of that page. Information about company participation. One of the things we do track is for committers who are employees of member companies. We track their participation by their company as well. So here we see some. I guess this is the entire history of Eclipse. One company contributed considerably in the early days, and they seem to dominate the chart. So this is this data again. We show company participation in all of the different things that are being measured. Again, Bugzilla, source code repositories, mailing lists, forums, Skerret, etc. Final screenshot. This one here showing just source code repository information, number of commits, number of authors, number of files, and I believe this is an overview. I don't remember what I specifically made a screenshot of here, but anyway, this style of screenshot is available for all sorts of, at a project level and as an overview. With that, Andrew, I'm done. I'll turn it over to Ian.
Thanks very much, Wayne.
All right, so this is Ian Skerret. So what I want to do is just go through a quick marketing update, and then go through the results from our annual community survey. So I think kind of one of the biggest activities myself and Dennis Roy and Chris Beaton worked on this kind of the last 2 quarters was redoing the website. The theme and the usability, the UI hadn't been really changed probably for at least 6 years, so it was time. And so we spent a process of community feedback and engagement on what we wanted to get out of the website, and the results we made public on June 11th. So the feedback that we have received and continue to receive has all been positive. We did some ongoing surveys, and everyone generally liked it or loved it. So we've been very happy with it, and so you can certainly just go to eclipse.org and check it out. In terms of next steps, we focused on the core site. As many of you probably know, we have lots of other services around that are critically important that now are going to be starting to migrate over. So I think, for instance, the mailing lists have already been moved over. Things like Bugzilla, Marketplace, Wiki, we'll start to work on those in Q3 too. We're also, we as being Denis and Chris are focused on helping the projects migrate over to the new theme, so we can get some consistency across all the project sites and the main site. So certainly, if you have feedback or if you find a problem, please open a bug, and we'll certainly get on it. The other thing I just wanted to just kind of remind everyone of is we've been, Roxanne Yonkis on my team has been doing a lot of work on our social media channels to feed in content and to build up these channels, and we're getting some pretty respectable numbers. And so we use these especially for the projects. If you have a release or content that you want to feed out to, or an event that you want to promote, please let us know. Send it to news@eclipse.org, or send it to Roxanne directly and myself directly, and we'll try and help promote some of the Eclipse-related activities that we have going on. The other thing is we launched the newsletter, end-user newsletter, I guess a year and a half ago, just less than a year and a half ago, and this past, I guess it was in late May, we actually went past the 100,000 subscriber mark, which actually kind of shocked me that we got up that quickly so fast. So I've been very happy with the results of this. And the other thing that we've been happy with is just the response to it. So in terms of the open rate, the click-through rate, we consistently are above the industry average in terms of the response that we're getting from the subscribers. And I think one of the keys is that each month that we do this, we pick a theme that's relevant to the Eclipse community and have a series of articles about that theme. So in June, no surprise, it was around the Luna release, but we did one around modeling, polar-assist, then location tech. And so certainly for projects out there that if you think there's a theme that you'd like to suggest, let Roxanne and myself know, and we'll try and get it scheduled. But the idea is that within each theme, there's 3 or 4 articles, technical articles, that would be of interest to the Eclipse community. So that's a quick marketing update. Now what I want to do is change gears to our community survey results. And this is the first time I've shown anyone these results. So it hasn't been published.
Looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, no one actually in this room has seen it. So it's just in time results. So this is a survey that we've been doing since 2009. And what we do is each year around April, mid-April, we put together a survey and then promote it from the Eclipse.org websites and the social media channels. And so I want to caution everyone, like, this is a survey. It's a data point, one data point. It's not gospel. And so as with any of these types of surveys, there's always bias. But I think it does provide an interesting data point, especially when you look at some of the trending information that we can get. Some years we get a huge response from Germany, some years we don't. This year we got a good response. It wasn't overwhelming. Sometimes that response from Germany is upwards to 30%. But this year, and actually a lot of it deals with if one of the developer portals in Germany does an article about the survey, then we often get a blip there, a bump there. But so we publish all the results going back. But just some quick demographics. So basically how long kind of the experience, it's really a good cross-section of experience from very senior to very junior people. I'm going to go quickly through the demographics. No surprise, most of the industry is from the high-tech, that kind of create high-tech products, which is typically the people that kind of engage actively in the Eclipse community. But there is a reasonably good section of other industries represented. The organization size, and this has been consistent year over year. We get about half what I would call small, medium businesses, upwards to 1,000 people, and then we get a good response from really large companies, and then in between. And role, no surprise, lots of developers and IT architects are who's answering this. So to some of the, and I'm just going to go through some of the kind of more pertinent ones. The entire data set is going to be published. I'm hoping to publish this afternoon. more detailed presentation summarizing the information will be published too. So one of the questions we asked is why do you contribute to open source projects? And this was not just Eclipse, this was in general. And this is pretty consistent where kind of the major feeling is I want to give back, I want to learn, and I believe in the FOSS philosophy. So that was pretty consistent the last time we asked for it. I'm a bit surprised that unpaid contribute is not higher, because I really believe that a lot of the more successful and actively managed open source projects are paid developers. But I think certainly kind of the wanting to giving back and being part of the community is an important reason to participate. We asked, and we've asked in the past, how developers spend your personal time. And I think this is important, especially if you're a company rolling out new products, to understand that like, what is this? This is kind of close to 90% of developers spend some part of their personal time programming. And so it's important to understand that they're using this free time to actually code. And then so when we follow up, so okay, well, why do you do that? And this has definitely been consistent from 2 years ago when we asked this, it's a skills, right? You want to maintain your skills and learn about new technology. So from my point of view, is if you're rolling out new technology, first of all, you want to keep it really easy for people to learn, and you want to keep the barriers to really low because they're doing this in their free time. And for instance, we asked, I'm spending a lot of time in IoT, the IoT space, and so open hardware is an important consideration in the space for allowing people to learn. And sure enough, over a third of developers in this survey have actually has some level of experience with open hardware. And so things like the BeagleBone, the Arduino, the Raspberry Pi. So it's something to consider. I think you can generalize that to other technology and when you're rolling it out. So we asked a set of questions about development tools. First thing, kind of around Eclipse. If you're an avid kind of student of these survey results, you remember last year we had a reasonable sized drop off in terms of adoption of the Juno or the Juno release. And I think it was indicative of some of the quality problems around Juno. I think the good news is with Kepler, we're back to where we have traditionally been around kind of when you include Kepler and the Luna, the milestone builds, it was always around 75%, and we're back at that level. So that's nice to see. In terms of kind of what are people doing, this is pretty consistent. I think you can see a bit of kind of RIA web apps drop off. I'm not sure if that's kind of really indicative or it's just kind of one of the data sets that we have for this survey. But we can certainly kind of year over year, if we do it next year, if it continues to go down. But I think overall it's pretty consistent. In terms of operating systems, you're seeing Mac, not really surprising, Mac jumping up a bit. Everything else is reasonably consistent year over year. And this is, I think these numbers go up and down, but there hasn't been huge amounts of changes. I think we saw a big drop in Windows early on, and now it's pretty consistent. From this is the primary operating system for development. We also asked language, and this is not a surprise that Java is kind of dominant, but we asked the secondary language question, kind of what other languages do you use besides your primary? Believe me, it's a very polyglot environment out there. People are using a lot of different languages, but one that really jumps out is JavaScript. And I think this is kind of going to be interesting when you see projects like Flux and Orion, where the world's going in terms of software development and cloud development. JavaScript's becoming incredibly important, and JavaScript in Java is becoming incredibly important. So how do we respond as a community in terms of tooling for that type of environment? Not to say that things like C++ aren't important and Python, but I think it was quite telling to see JavaScript jump out so high and so prevalent there. So this is surprisingly enough, to me at least, or kind of much to my chagrin, this is the first time we actually asked, what's your primary Java SE level that you deploy to? And I haven't had a chance to ask some of my Java experts whether this is good or not, but Java 8 was just announced in March at EclipseCon, actually. So 9%, over 9% have actually already migrated to Java 8. A huge chunk is still on Java 7. But like over 25% is Java 6 and below. So, or there's that, don't know actually in fact, so, but still pretty close to 25% is Java 6 and below. So then we went into kind of different product categories of what people are using. Yeah, this really hasn't changed. Kind of Tomcat continues to dominate. JBoss and Jetty continue to do well in the application server space. Code management, we can now finally say Git is the #1 code management tool. You could see the trends moving in that direction, with Subversion kind of going in the opposite direction, and to a certain extent CVS. But this year is actually, surprisingly enough, the first time that Git is surpassed Subversion. And if you add in GitHub to that equation, it's even more dominant. So I think Git is definitely one in this area. The other thing that we started asking last year with the importance of things like Orion, perceptions around web-based IDE. Not a lot's changed, quite frankly, in the year. So I think we still have a lot of work in terms of educating people on the benefits and functionality of things like Orion, but as an industry of web-based IDEs. And so that's something to watch going forward. And the final thing that we always ask, and I purposely leave this very open-ended. I've always left it open-ended with just how satisfied are you with Eclipse. So it's up to the user to decide what they mean by Eclipse. And 80% are over satisfied and very satisfied. That's basically about where we're at year over year. I think it might be a bit down, but if you look at the unsatisfied and very unsatisfied, that's a pretty consistent. So I think that the neutral, so there's still some people who kind of moved into the neutral. But overall, I think the feedback we're getting is positive for the Eclipse community. And that's it for me.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ian, and each of the speakers. I've been monitoring Twitter and IRC and email, and at the moment there are no questions. So what I'm going to do is suggest we should adjourn. If you do have any questions after the fact, or if you watched the video on YouTube and you have a question, you can comment on the YouTube video. I will monitor that and basically pull in the appropriate person to answer the question. And feel free to send me an email if you have a question as well. Actually, myself and all my colleagues are very easy to find. So my email is andrew.ross@eclipse.org. So thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate your time, and take care.